All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get started here, and I have a special guest. I'm glad I had an opportunity to meet this young lady. Today's core concept is how to get $50,000 for an art project in the next 2 to 4 months without having to risk any money. And we have Miss Alyssa Kaiser on the phone. How you doing, Alyssa?
All right, how are you, Alan?
Doing good, doing good. And we came across them after our mastermind group down in Galveston and learned how to reach out to people on Facebook. And one of our colleagues reached out to them, and we've been running ever since. So we're going to go over, just so you know the agenda today, we're going to go over a few case studies so you know what we do, how we do it. Again, you'll always know why we care before you know what we do. So we'll showcase that and kind of our story and on how we got into this and why we're passionate about it. And we'll go through a few steps to show you the process, but more importantly, how to avoid some of the pain in the process. Alyssa's been doing this for over 20 years, so has a lot of good tips, a lot of good stories and insights on how to do this specifically in the art space. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alyssa, how you doing?
I'm pumped. I'm ready to get started.
Good stuff. Okay, so we're going to go a few of these case studies, and these are incredible. I mean, I've seen a few. I have visited some of these places, but even more excited to be able to work with them now. So let's talk about the National Black Arts Festival.
So my history is pretty much that I was the grants administrator with the foundation, and what I had the privilege of doing was working with the Arts Fund, which is very big here in Atlanta. I'm in the outskirts of Atlanta. Okay. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'm going to do my best at it. So the Arts Fund is something that was created by a lot of city officials and, you know, a lot of people that were into the arts. And we have a lot of history here in Atlanta, and there was no real funding for like the theaters and things like that. And so what I had the privilege of doing was working with various different programs, specifically the National Black Arts Festival, and, you know, working on their programming with them and really teaching them how to write a good program to get grant funding. So being a grants administrator, I was able to write the grant program itself and then, well, co-author it, I'll say that. And then on top of that, what we had was, we had like these little, what they call forums, and we did some one-on-one coaching. So as you can see in this little photo here down at the bottom, it's kind of like stories in motion. And that's what we talked about, and that was their programming. But you can't just say, I want to tell a story through dance, right? So you have to go through and really say how it's going to affect the city's youth, the city's constituents, how it's going to affect the tourism here. And so that's what we did. We were able to flesh out all of that information and really get them where they need to be and move forward. Prior to that, the city of Atlanta had what was known as block grants. And block grants were given to small cohorts of, you could be doing like a beautification project or, you know, like even a block festival for your neighborhood, right? And they would give small grants, $2,500 to $5,000, even sometimes they were $500. But what I had the privilege of doing was working with those people in those small communities who really needed the money, but didn't know how to get it. And so I would, you know, after being part of the co-author of that program, just going over there and really talking to them about how they should present themselves. And had the opportunity to sit on a couple of site visits, and a lot of those site visits, you're in people's homes, you know, and they're older people. They've been here for however long. You know, I'm not an Atlanta native, so it was really cool to really meet Atlanta natives and really just see how their love for the art and really hear it, you know, because you can't really hear it on paper. You really just need to read what it is, and then you have the ability, well, I have the ability to kind of translate that. And so that's really how I worked with the arts programs here in Atlanta.
And there's so many artists out there, there's so many film festivals, there's so much historic and artifacts all over this country, and each and every city has these types of grants available. So that's incredible. I appreciate that. Let's talk about the museum, the African American Museum in Boston.
So, being originally from Boston, I was born and raised Boston, Roxbury, Mass. My grandmother is Ruth Doris Reed Gore, and the Reed family is very prominent if you look us up. The Gore family as well. And so, my grandmother was well, let me back up. We are a family who has a lot of political power in Boston,
Absolutely.
and she had 10 siblings left and right. So 5 guys, 5 girls. So it was really cool to have all of these cousins and everything. So, but
Not
my
much TV
grandma,
back then, huh?
well, and it's crazy because on my granddad's side, on the Gore side, there were 14 of them. So yeah, not a lot of TV. So, my grandmom, she became a secretary. Prior to that, she was a drum majorette, and she was just kind of a city girl. And they all like the city of Boston says, "You're just like your grandmother." And how did I be just like my grandmother? Well, she was secretary to Muriel and Otto Snowden, and she worked with some very high-ranking people in Massachusetts. And so what she did was she created programs for Museum of African American History, the Freedom House Boston, and several other at Tufts University, just different programs that had to deal with African American history. And I got to sit right next to her and do that at a very young age. I started that when I was about 10 years old. And so, you fast forward and you grow up and you start to think back, well, how did I get into nonprofit? How did I know how to write these programs? Well, it's kind of rote. It's kind of inherent because that's where I spent my summers. That's where I spent my winters. And so I got to learn how to write a viable and profitable program at a young age.
Nice.
So she did this with the first African American Museum in Boston. It used to be on Joy Street. And Joy Street, if you know anything about Boston, we have a lot of one-way streets downtown. And so Joy Street's this little tiny street, and you really couldn't find it. And I remember going to the grand opening, and we did this. It was actually my dance troupe, which is another reason why I got into the arts. It was my dance troupe who did the African dance to welcome and open the African Meeting House in the African American Museum. So it really hit home for me as I grew up and really started to realize how much history I actually have in me and how much I could really help my community here in Atlanta, having transplanted here. So it's just been really a cool ride. It's been really, really cool. And so with that, she did a lot of programming there. She also did, like I said, Freedom House Boston. She was head of the Golden Years. It was a program for senior women. And in her later years, she worked with Tufts universities, trying to pull in the African American doctors and the young children there, not children, but students. And it was really hard for a lot of people to translate what Tufts was trying to do to our community. So it was just really cool to be a part of that.
No, that is. And there's so many historic Black universities. There's so many historic African American cities and places where there's other minorities, Latinos cities that have so much history, and they want to create museums and they don't know how. And that's where you come in. So you're kind of like that NFL kid that, they go and they spend the summers with their dad and they train their whole life and they end up getting into the league. So you've been in grant writing, from jump since you were a small kid. So that's phenomenal.
They call me Clutch a lot of the time.
Yeah. So let's talk about Ease International. And this is incredible. Doing things with veterans and homelessness. That's great.
So I got to, being here and just being in this nonprofit world, we consult on our own. And this young lady just happened to email me and she said, I really would like to work with you. And I was like, well, what is it that you could actually work with me on? And she said, well, we were downtown and we were giving food to the homeless and we were doing this and we were doing that. And I said, oh, okay. Long story short, we found out we're from the same state. We have a lot of similarities in our stories, but her niche is really, it is really interesting. She works with veterans and formerly incarcerated homeless people, and she really wants to create those programs. And so she's in a smaller town in Massachusetts, known as Springfield, and she's got housing outside of the colleges. And so what she's doing is she's rehabbing a lot of homes and she's providing programmings to those veterans and those formerly incarcerated women and children. And if you're familiar with the federal grants, there's a lot of grants coming out right now for like STD testing, HIV testing, and things like that. This is an access thing, right? So if you don't know, you don't know. And so what she's doing is she's creating those programs, or we're creating those programs to really get that money down. So it's a ceiling about $4 million. And so we're trying to pull it down and trying to get those people who are affected by these very very unfortunate events back into society, reduce recidivism, and really just get some parenting with them. There's a parenting component for parents who are just on the street but they don't have custody of their children, working with the foster system, partnering with the DHS, which is Department of Health up there. And she has a partnership with the city where they've asked her to go ahead and do some women's work. So we are working diligently to rehab the homes and really get this program funded and started up by January 2020. So I'm really excited for her. And again, she just hit me up out of the blue, just sent an email, and because it's so close to home. But not only that, it's just, we are a human race, right? And we're all running the same rat race, and it's hard for me to watch someone suffer. And so just being a part of this and getting my hands dirty in this is really fun, because not only do I get to help author a program, but I get to see it come to fruition and really watch people change their lives and want to change their lives. There's one thing to be said about those who don't want to, but those that do want to, we're creating access, we're creating an avenue, and we're creating, a home for them. And so that's really, really cool. It's really cool to be a part of.
And that's phenomenal, especially in all of these, smaller towns. I mean, veteran housing is huge. I know there's a huge initiative to give hundreds of millions of dollars across the U.S. for veteran housing, and any programs around that, coupled with the city beautification. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of grant money out there that can be chopped up. And we'll talk about the process, but I want to hear a little bit more about your grandmother and the Freedom House.
So Grammy, she's been gone about 13 years now. So one thing my grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid was, you always must have a plan, Alyssa. You always must have a plan. And I didn't understand what that meant. So the picture here that is right there, that's actually Muriel Snowden, someone who's basically a sister to my grandmother. And so the Freedom House Roxbury was really a place of refuge for people of color. And the senior program, what I know mostly about, is something that had been started because there were people like my great grandmother, who I actually had the privilege of meeting. She didn't have anywhere to go. So back then in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have a lot of senior programs, and the Freedom House was one of those only programs. And what Ruth, my grandmother, did was she created the program, and she every year would go out for money. And I mean, she would go hard. We would be down there giving food, like what do they call that? Meals on Wheels. Okay. We were part of that. Honestly, we were part of the first cohort to test run it in our city. And it was just big. It got big so fast because we were delivering dinners to seniors, And then when the, you remember that commercial? Help, I fall, I can't get up. So there was like that emergency call center thing.
Life Alert.
Life Alert, yes.
Life Alert, I remember the commercials, yeah.
Yeah, she was a part of that too. So it was just really cool to see that come alive when I was a kid. And it made me want to do something more in our community. And so that's what she did. And she carried a lot of that through her church. She was very strong in her faith, she and my grandfather. But they just did everything. And I owe it all to her. I really, really do. Because she really, really, she put a foundation in me that I didn't even know would be, so big right now. It's 2019, and I'm thinking back to 1995 when I was 14 years old, and really just like, wow, like I was really a part of all that. Yep. I was really part of Meals on Wheels being a big thing in Boston. I was a part of her building ramps. I mean, remember back when places didn't even have a ramp, this was a big deal for Freedom House because they had seniors who were in wheelchairs, but they couldn't, the way it was structured, you couldn't get into the building. So they built up the ramp, and I was part of that structure. So what you see here is when they were rebuilding a driveway, and this is around a fire, if I'm not mistaken. They had everybody come out in the community and clean up and do the fire rehab for that specific home. But the Freedom House itself had gone through so many renovations, and I hear now, I haven't been a part of a lot of the programming now, but they moved directly across the street where the old library used to be, and that was a better place for them because it's more on a ground level. And so those who are, still going to the senior programs and stuff can have access to it. But we were a part of that. We were part of building those ramps. We were part of making the basement actual basement. So it was really cool. It's really cool to be a part of.
Phenomenal. So what we can do, I mean, we've talked a little bit about the arts film festival. This is all around arts and what you can do in a specific city. We've talked about the Freedom House. So now I want to go through so you understand, again, what the core concept is, who this is for. Stay with us. It's gonna get really good. We're going to give you some good tips that you can walk away with. Whether you're trying to start a film festival, it's a city beautification project, if you're an arts person, or if you're a museum trying to get things up and running, some historic artifacts for a specific city, that is why we're here. And you've probably, the reason why you've joined, you've probably tried a few different things, and for some reason or another, they haven't quite worked out, whether it's marketing, whether it's board development, you tried grant funding, you may have not had the foundations, but you promised, right? Your friends, your family, your brother, mother, sister, cousin, that you would get this project off the ground. And if you don't do something soon, bad things may happen. So that's what we want to talk about. We want to go through how we get rid of the pain associated with grant funding. And before we go in, we'll tell you our story and how we were able to navigate that, because this whole platform came from just trial and error. So in order to get a $50,000 arts project, and I know there's somebody on here saying, hey, 50,000 is great, but I need 500,000. I need multi-millions. I want to bite a chunk of that $4 million ceiling that Alyssa was talking about. But before you do any of that, we need to validate your hypothesis, right? And get, just like in a for-profit, they do product market fit. We need to do program support fit, get you that first 50K grant, and then we can really ramp up. So we'll talk about that. So in order to get an arts project going and 50K for it in the next 2 to 4 months, you're gonna need a great mission. You're gonna need a 501c3 or a partner, some signature programs. You're going to need a project website because people need to know that you're really there, a fundraising flow, and a grant funding system. Now, if you don't know what a grant funding system is, that's okay, because most people don't know what that is. And it's a newer concept. And basically what we've created is Uber for grants. We have phenomenal consultants all over the country that are specialized. Alyssa, and she's going to tell you her background in a minute, is one of the top historic Black artifact and grant writers in the country. And we have 1,500 of them with different specialties all across the country. So we're going to hear from her. I really want to highlight Alyssa, but I want to let you know kind of how this program started, not to just impress you, but more to impress upon you that we've been doing this a while. So I've been in the nonprofit arena for about 15 years. I was the kid that sold everything growing up, right? Lotions, potions, hope, soap, you name it, I sold it. But when I got to college, I found an organization that I truly was passionate about. And where I grew up, the African-American population was less than 6% when we talk about graduation rate at UTSA. We started an organization that now is all over the country. You may have heard of it, Men of Honor. And back then, like I said, the graduation rate was 6%. long story short, in about 3.5 years through our campus, our community involvement, we were able to increase that to about 38%. We even helped register over 3,200 students for the 2008 election, right? So we wanted our voice to be heard. And with that, we had so much notoriety, so much press. So much notoriety and so much press, we wanted to expand. We didn't have expansion money, so we looked at grants. We quickly found that grants were extremely hard to find, even more difficult to write. So I paid a grant writer just to handle it for us because I was doing fundraising. I was wearing multiple hats. I was rounding our volunteers, running our programs, trying to get our major donors, right? That maybe sound familiar to somebody else. So I paid the grant writer. There was really no communication, no easy way to track what was going on. Eventually they took our money and they ran off with it. So this platform started by necessity because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know there was associations out there that's a higher authority to prevent things like that from happening. I thought there was, hey, there has to be, and I was really pissed off and it drove me to action. So I said, look, I'm a millennial. There has to be an app for this. There wasn't. And that's when we created it. So we created it a couple years ago. Took us, like I said, through trial and error, a couple years to at least get the program up and running. My background before that was enterprise software. So I knew a little bit of the high level, got some people to build it. And since launching last year, January 2008, we've helped organizations find and secure over $5.8 million. And that's just since launching last year. And that number is quickly rising. You've probably seen us on social media, in the news. We're graduates of Station Houston. We won that event. We're a Mass Challenge, and we are backed by venture capitalist Capital Factory. They're the number one VCs here in Texas. So that's just a little bit about me and how we got started. It's important because I always want to know people's motivation, not only what they know and how they do things, but really why they care, right? Why'd you get into this? So right. I was really passionate about it. So we'll go to Alyssa. Alyssa, tell us a little bit about you.
So, as you guys have heard a little bit, I've been in nonprofit work since I was a child. So it really just has come natural to me. I'm a Atlanta implant. And so I've been a part of what we call Grant Writers of America Association. It's a cohort started in 2007 by Beverly D. Burgess, and they have raised over $150 million and it's been a service 12 plus years. I have my degree is in business management and marketing from AIU, Atlanta. Nice. And I've been, as it says, nonprofit historic preservation in the arts for 20 plus years. My niche is really just designing programs and really just understanding how those reviewers and those evaluators are looking at your applications. I've sat at the table with a lot of people who review applications and watch them go to bat for those who have greatly written programs and those who have poorly written programs. I've watched them go to bat for $1. It's crazy when you're in that room and they're trying to, do that. Especially now in this time where, we're talking about VA grants and healthcare grants and historic grants and arts grants. Like these four categories have the most funding, and people don't know that because people give to what they like, right? So we are all American patriots, and so we're going to give to veterans. We're going to give to children and youth because why? That's what most of us have, are the children, right? And then we're going to give to the arts because the arts is actually missing in schools, and people don't realize that. And so there's a lot of funding out there. And so what I do is I am a nonprofit consultant, and I 100% work with nonprofits in really driving their mission home and creating their vision and making sure their purpose turns into profit. And so that's how I coin myself, and I love what I do. A single mom of 3, living in the outskirts of Atlanta, and I love it. There's nothing more fulfilling. And they always say if you if you do what you love, you never work a day. And I haven't worked a day since I left corporate. And it's been fun. It's been a real fun ride. It's been it's strugglesome, but it's been a ride.
And so that's so important. And all of us have sat in front of that auditorium, heard that keynote speech, and they said, look, don't worry about the money, follow your passion. And some of us, we did that, and a couple of years, we got into it, and we're like, man, our passion doesn't really make us any money, right? So right. Alyssa is here to help you turn your purpose into profit. If you're an artist on the phone, if you love to paint, but we've all heard the struggling artist, right? You don't have the money that you want. We can help you with grant funding. We can help you if you're really right in tuned and want to preserve a historic museum, or if you want to start a program in your community, we can help you and get some of those expenses paid and do the programs so you're not struggling, and help initiatives that the government already want to give money and have money for. You just need experts like Alyssa and GrantSource to help you write those proposals. So thank you, Alyssa, for being on today.
No problem, and don't get it twisted, Alan. There's no such thing as a starving artist.
Okay.
I paint and I draw, but there's no such thing as a starving artist, man. It's always, to me, starving means you're lacking of knowledge, you're lacking of wealth, and you're lacking of substance. And that's not, I don't think that there's artists out here that lack any of that. I think that we have to start changing our narratives and changing our conversations. And so there's no such thing as a starving artist, man. I paint every day just to soothe my whole soul. So
spoken like a true artist. Good stuff. Well, we have 3 tips that we want to go through. Stay with us on how you do this. The first one, step 1 to getting a $50K grant in the next 2 to 4 months, right? You need to isolate your niche and focus on creating cutting edge programs. We all heard this old Chinese proverb, and I don't have the voice, but if you chase 2 rabbits, you will catch none, right? If you think about your Mr. Miyagi voice, but if you chase 2 rabbits, you'll really catch none. And that's what we focus on. Is right when we get in with you, we create a strategy session, and Alyssa will create that cutting edge program to make sure that narrative will cut through the noise of all the other narratives that these funders get, and they get hundreds of them. And then we will break that down into different grants that we can write, right? That's based on their demographic, the geography, the age that we're going after, to really showcase who you're serving and get the grant money that you deserve. So let's talk about the program and how you isolated the niche here for the National Black Arts Festival. The first one.
What was done here was, as I stated before, it was like stories in motion. So on paper, it's stories in motion. I just want to tell a story. I want to tell a story about, so you've seen the Nutcracker, you've seen the I can only go back to a mall and the night carriers. As you can tell, I was brought up in church, so I know a lot of spiritual stories. So I'm gonna use those as examples. So we talk about the Nutcracker, right? And the Nutcracker is about, what do you think it's about? You know, if you think it's about a nutcracker, this guy is standing there and he's got this thing to crack a nut, right? No, it's really about how we're telling the story and how it's going to affect the way people feel. So again, going back to how people give, we give to what we feel for. So we give to art, right? So this whole dance in motion and this story in motion thing, you're telling the story through motion. But what does that say on paper? It says, okay, once we tell this story, we're telling about, I'll give an example, just pulling it all together. We have a very, very big homelessness initiative here in Georgia. Yep. And so let's say we were going down and we were just seeing all these homeless people. You want to change that, right? And you're really writing to that arts grant that says it's focused on homelessness and it's focused on feeding the homeless and focusing on that. But you really want to show how you're going to be able to do that. Well, through this right here, through Stories in Motion, you'd have to show that, but you have to write it down. You have to make sure it makes sense to the reader. So one thing that what we do as humans is we never realize that we're writing for our audience. We're not writing for us. We're writing for our audience. Just like a show is for an audience. And that's what makes a good artist versus a bad artist, right? So when you're writing these programs and when you're really getting down to the nitty gritty, you want to tell your story and say, okay, Sally's going to dance around and then she's going to fall on the ground. And when she falls on the ground, it's a representation of her losing everything, right? And then she's going to get back up. And as soon as she gets back up, it's like the sun has risen and there's food all around her and there's money falling from the sky. Well, what does that represent? She was saved, right? And so you go and that's how that program is written. Now, if I saw that on a piece of paper, I'd be like, okay, that's a great story. But how can that translate into my community? How is it going to affect the people that are going to see it? Well, I cannot remember the numbers right now, and don't quote me on this, but there are a lot of people who don't think that homelessness will affect them, right? But homelessness can affect anyone. It can happen to any one of us at any given time, especially in the given state of the economic state that we're in and everything else. So when we are telling our story on paper and we're telling it to a funder, we want to make sure that it says, okay, so constituents will watch our story and they'll understand that it's all of our responsibility, not just the responsibility of the homeless person. It's all of our responsibility to make sure that they eat, to make sure that they have some type of shelter. Now, 90% of the shelters here in Georgia are full. And when they're full, that means that they have only not men and women, women and children. A lot of them don't host men. And so you have a lot of wandering men. So what happens to them? Well, they sleep under bridges and they sleep under, on store parking lots, and they don't get meals because they're men. And so the perception is that if you're a man, you can do whatever, you can work off your back, right? But there are veterans who have no idea how to do this because they're going through a mental health state and everything. But you have to translate that in your programming. You have to say, okay, we want to speak to those who really are into understanding mental health, understanding the arts, understanding homelessness, understanding the veterans, and we want to pull their money. And that's really where this money is. It's money, funding is from people pooling their monies together. Yep. And that's foundation money is a lot of time is foundation money. It is pooled into one thing, and it's the same with federal grants. But when we go into private funding and foundation funding, it really is a lot of people come together and they say, hey, we want to give to this. And so I've had the privilege of actually working with those people and really watching how their brains really think when they're reading these stories. And it's the same concept as if when you're writing a scholarship application. I authored those as well, how to actually get a scholarship. My family has a scholarship fund, so that's something I do really well too. But at the same time, if I see the story of how my mom got cancer, we get that all the time, right? But that's not going to get you the scholarship. If I see that you were homeless, your parents had maybe a drug issue or a mental health issue, and you still got through school, right? All of these adverse things happen to you. You still got through school, you're going to get the scholarship. So translating that onto a larger scale, if you can show that there's a community of people who are affected in that same way, and that your dollars can be more effective, or your return on investment, because that's really what anybody's looking for, is a return on their investment. So the return on their investment is that they're getting 3 or 4 families off the street, or even, one family off the street. That's how you have to tell your story. You have to remember that the person in the audience has to understand why. And so your mission and your vision, that might be, to help all the nonprofits in the region, affect homelessness, but you can't do it if you're not in the right programming.
Yep.
And so go ahead.
And that's so important. You want to make sure, so just like Alyssa said in the first, let's focus on one thing. Let's focus on the dance program. And then from the dance program, they went into and they focused, hey, this is what the dance program is going to do. Here's what it's going to affect. Here's here's the story behind it. It's not just another dance program.
Right.
Here's the impact that it's going to create and the people that it's going to help through this program. And then there's other programs around that. Once you get in, this is that 50K, right? Let's get the first part, and then we can move around into other things. We can move around. What was after that? There was the film festival, right? There was all kinds of art showcases in that.
Right.
And that's how we really start to move this thing forward. So along with that, showcase, just what Alyssa said, right? Is your niche set in stone? No, that's to get into the door, because there's so many different, and it may sound disingenuous, just like Alyssa said, hey, my mom has cancer and that's why I need this grant. But, right, you have to have more meat behind that. Right. And once you have a strong niche and you can put more color behind that, the reason is they get many different, these funders get many different narratives that are pretty much the same. So you have to isolate a niche so they can see exactly who they're going to be serving with this particular program. And then you can go into other circles and showcase, you know, what you're going to do for that particular project. And then the biggest thing, how it's going to impact that community. So, and that's what we do on our journey, right? So for each and every single project, our technology platform, and people ask, well, you know, are you a software company? Are you a service company? Think about Uber, right? Uber doesn't own any cars, right? But wherever you go, they will have that exact car that you want at the exact destination that you want to go to, and you know exactly how much you're gonna pay. That's what Grant Source is. So, and this, and I hate to call you a car here, Stephanie, but you get the best the consultant, right, at a flat rate with investment protection, right? So right away, you have the consulting on what you need to do. You'll have a project manager on the Grant Source side that'll go through the strategy session with you. We'll teach you through training how to do your project narrative, how to do your project budget, and all that's done up front with a database that shows exactly what grants that are available, along with software and analytics to show you the grants that you have, the grants, and we match up the missions that other funders in your area have given to, and your highest probability to get those grants. And then we align those with different councilmen, mayor, judges, and get you a letter of recommendation. With all that, you have the consultants like Alyssa to help you at least write the grant for you. Not only is she going to write the program in the beginning, where we get all this middle stuff from and find the grants you qualify for, it's full service. They're going to write your proposal, write your grant as well, and everything is housed in our system, license as a service. So that's what we do. So step 2, showcase a cutting edge program that is already supported by a strong foundation. And Alyssa went into some of this, and so many times you see this as well, Alyssa. People say, hey, I'd love to get some grants, right? But you know, I'm just starting, which is okay, but I have nothing. Grants are the end all be all when this pyramid to really, you know, be flipped upside down. One of my consultants say grants are the icing on the top. Yep. And you start from the bottom. So Alyssa's going to help you write your programs, have a strong mission. You need a board of directors. We're going to talk a little more about that. Team members and volunteers. And you need to attempt to raise your own fundraising first. Everybody's watched the show Shark Tank at least once, right? The first question, Alyssa, every single time they ask you, and people are just a deer in the headlights when this question comes. They ask every single person the first question: how much money have you made? Right? Because if you've made some money, and if you have been serious about this, then I can put some of my own money toward this. Same thing in a non-profit world when you go for grants, right? You need fundraising to show that you've put in some money, and then they'll say, okay, you already have some support. Let's go deeper into that, and grants are the icing on the top. So Alyssa, let's go through just a few of these real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Strong mission. We have to start with that, right?
Yes, it's imperative that you have a strong mission, and I always suggest you have a vision statement as well.
Yep.
You want to make sure that you're driving your car not blind, if that makes any sense. You're going somewhere without the blindfold on. So it's really important to have a strong mission and vision.
Yep. And the board, this is one that's overlooked. People say, okay, yes, I need a mission. Yes, I need volunteers. Why do I need a board?
Well, your board is actually the steering wheel, right? So
Okay.
I'm putting this in car terms.
Okay.
So they're the steering wheel. And what a lot of people don't realize is that your board is your first investor. So a lot of your board should be giving, well, not a lot of it, 100% of your board should be giving to the organization. Why? Because what they invest in is what they're going to invest in, if that makes any sense. So if they're putting in $10 into you, they're going to make sure that they're getting their $10 worth out of you. So you're going to have different committees in the board as well. So organizational structure and board of directors are one of the, it's kind of the steering wheel, the wheels, and everything on a car that makes you go. And so, and before you put the doors on, you want to make sure all that is sound and the tires are inflated, and, you know, the steering wheel is intact. You got power steering fluid, you know, all of that. That costs money, but it makes more sense for the board to pay into the organization, because why? Once they invest in you, they're investing in you, meaning they're investing in the nonprofit. They believe in your mission, in your vision. They're driving those home.
Yeah, and that's so big, and that's how you recruit, right? These team members and volunteers. You have a strong mission, you have structure, and they say, okay, we can get behind that.
Right. And so your volunteers are going to be community members. They're going to be, you know, so just to back up just a little bit, you're going to always have a founding board, and then you're going to have your further board, your long-term board, right? You want to make sure that that term is written, how long people can stay on the board and how they roll off and on, and what the status of them will be, because they can turn into your team members and your volunteers. And it's just on how your bylaws are written, but it's very important to have those people in the community who are actually doing the work, right? So just like the Boys and Girls Clubs, just using them as an example, they have hundreds of volunteers, thousands of volunteers, and they also have a lot of paid people. But at the end of the day, it's all in how that board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club actually got into the volunteers and team members. So the original board was probably a volunteer, turned into a volunteer for every Boys and Girls Club out there. And that's just how it went.
Nice. Excellent. And that's after that. And I know we're here to talk about grants. I know we're here to talk about the 50K, but what we really want to do is not have people walk away with just enough to do nothing, right? We want them to know all of these steps. And by the same token, don't be overwhelmed by this. And at the end, we'll showcase this. Of course, we'll give you the steps if you want to do everything yourself. But if you'd like us to handle this for you, we handle all of this for you, right? All the way through. We have the templates, we have the guides. We'll show you what the investment is, and then how that investment is protected, which is really why people want to do business with us, because no matter what you invest with us, just like your board, right? No matter what you invest with us, if we don't at least help you get your investment back within the first 12 months, we'll either continue to do work at no cost or give you credit for the difference. And we've helped people get over $5.8 million in the last, year and a half, 2 years, and we haven't had to give a credit yet. So this is an example, right? So we're talking about historic buildings, and here's an example in our software. So right when we come along, before we even enter into a solid agreement, that there's going to be grants available. We'll show you all the way down, federal, city, county, state. We'll show you the grant incentive. Not only do we do grants, we also do the incentive. So if there's a building involved, right, we'll show you not only the grants, the rebates, the tax incentives, the bill credits, right, even the PACE funding, the PACE financing, if there's a specific loan program, if there's a rebate, a tax abatement. All of that is housed, and we'll show that to you in our software if you want to move forward. And before you even move forward, you know exactly what you have. We'll do an overview for you, like we're doing here. Once you put down a deposit, we'll make that investment. Once you make an investment, into your nonprofit, we will make an investment to you guys and make sure that you don't go anywhere further without knowing what you're getting into before you invest any further. So one of the things is too, and this has been big, Google has a $120,000 grant, and we have team members in our organization and in our network that actually sit on this Google board. They're giving away $60 million in the next by the end of the year. So this is a huge grant to take advantage of, and that's $120,000, $10,000 a month. We can help you get this grant and then manage the compliance and everything for you. Here's why it's important. Because once everybody knows, right, when you do a search, the first thing somebody does, if they want to go to an arts festival in a different city, if they want to find something, the first place they go, right, no matter what the website is, they click in what they're looking for. So the sponsored ads get the most traffic out of anything. 80% of the websites that are gone to are by the paid ads on the very top. And that's what Google gives you. They give you 10,000, people spend a ton of money of this. So they're going to give you $120,000 over the year to spend, $10,000 a month. And here's how that funnel works. The visitors turn to subscribers, turn to either supporters, meaning they're either going to come in, they're going to be donors and continue to donate, and then they become maybe ambassadors. And you build out that other funnel, like that board, those volunteers. And once you have a sustainable way to get donors, subscribers, visitors, it becomes that much easier to get other grants. And this grant will help you do that without you having to shell out a bunch of money out of pocket. So the key points are in the section. Have a strong mission, documented your board of directors, run your fundraising early and often, so you can position the whole stack once you write this proposal for this phenomenal program that Alyssa's going to write for you. So the last step, and I know we're wrapping up here, is scale out project funding and expand your impact. So here's what we want to do, and I know we have a few minutes left. I want to respect everybody's time, but everybody wants that $1 million grant action flow to where you have that in. In the beginning, I talked about project support fit. Just like a for-profit getting product market fit, you want to make sure you have project support fit. So you have this incredible program that Alyssa writes for you. And then before we write the grant, we can get you that big $120,000 Google grant. We will manage everything for you. So you can go out and recruit, use that grant to really showcase what you're doing in the community. So anybody that searches your topic, artists, film festival, whatever it is, they can see it right away because you're the first people that pops up in an ad like that. You can build your volunteers, you'll build your programs, you can book meetings right away because you're visible in the community. And then we will perform and make sure that that program starts on a certain date, collect the impact study, and then get donations or receive a grant. This is our flow to get you that first 50 grand. And once we have that, we can really scale that up. Like you saw on that strategy session, we can go after different types of grants. Once we have that, foundation, corporation grants, celebrity grants, block grants, community grants, federal grants, you name it, we can do it. But instead of you spending a lot of money and losing money to somebody that is not reputable, that's what happened to us in the past. Leverage technology, leverage software, leverage all of the modern things that are out there today to really dial this in and then go quickly and have a good representative to put a letter of recommendation with your proposal. This is one of our clients and a state representative here in Houston. So that's what we focus on. Just so you know, it takes, many of you want to know about that Google Ad Grant. So right away, here's our process. Once we get you started, you pick a project, and we do the keyword research for you to optimize that for you, the ad creation, landing page development. If you have all of this done, then we really focus on getting your account set up and getting that grant pushed through for you. That way you have $10,000 a month to spend and can start really creating an impact while we are writing the grant simultaneously, right? We have 1,500 grant writers across the country. They can all write about 60 grants a year each. So we have the capacity to write over 100,000 grants every single year. The big thing with these Google Ad grants is about maintaining eligibility and compliance, just like federal grants. And Alyssa was a federal grant administrator. Any grant that you get, there's going to be some kind of admin, some compliance that you need to do to maintain. And if you don't and fall out of it, it's extremely hard to get those grants again. So we do all of that work for you, whether it's on the federal grant side, whether it's on just a Google grant, getting a marketing grant, we will maintain all of that compliance for you. Also in our platform, you can do SEO, reputation management, digital asset management, and all this is done for you. Again, this is full service and you always have access to the software. And this is to help you with your arts, your festival, your museums. They need to be on all these different platforms, and our software will shoot this out to all of these different directories, make sure it's updated. So once we write the grants and these funders are looking for you, all the correct information is in there. You'll get a report every single month, housed either via mobile or web, that will show you all your click-through rates, your conversion costs, and then project-wise, where we are at each step in the process when it comes to your grants and your projects. This was built, ladies and gentlemen, out of necessity, because this is exactly what we wanted for ourselves. And, you know, unfortunately, we had to go out and build it. Fortunately, we're helping a ton of people and organizations, you know, find money for their mission doing it. So that's what we focus on. Key point number 3 is just really, once we have that flow together, just go out and go gangbusters once we've done that. But you don't want to waste a ton of money. Just like product market fit, you wouldn't spend, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a project unless you knew that it had some legs. So that's what we do first off with you. So you have 2 options. One, and we're wrapping up here, you can do it yourself, right? It'll take a long time researching. I'm telling you, Alyssa and I have done this. We've tried to go out and research a bunch of grant and everything that needs to be done, and, you know, all the different systems and database and the softwares that you can use to validate it, trying to find and network with the right people for alignment with the wrong tools. You can struggle and literally pull your hair out. I had a bunch of hair before this started. I'm just playing, but it's frustrating, and we can take all that legwork out for you. So if you want to work with us, we can do that. We can help you sustainably create your grant funding system, which up to this date has never been done before, all in one platform, easily accessible via mobile and web, with specialty consultants like Alyssa. For whatever your project is, you have the exact consultant you need to get you the money you deserve. And again, this is for cities, artists, film festivals, museums. Just show you a little bit about us. We've been all around the country. We built this platform just going around to top grant writing associations. All of our grant writers have either secured $1 million in grants. They've been around for at least 3 years, and they're part of a major association, just like Alyssa is part of Grant Writers of America. That holds them to another standard. So you won't have the same thing that happened to me back in the day and somebody just disappear and steal your money, because they have an association and a governing body to answer to. So we've been all over the country. This is actually one of our first clients, Southern University in Louisiana. We've done some things for them. We've spoken all across the country. We're now international as well in Toronto. If you go onto Amazon's website, we're actually featured, and we're blessed to be one of the first, their top startups featured. If you go to aws.amazon.com/startups and scroll down, you'll see we're on their front page of their website, and we're going to be one of their top partners. Here's some of the clients that we've done and some of our key partners across the country. We have, over 763 clients in various capacities, have helped people over $5.8 million since last year. Oh, this is what I was talking about. If you go to aws.amazon.com, you'll see us right there, featured as one of their top events. So here's what you'll get, and we'll talk about an offer you can't refuse, right? Because everybody wants to know, how do we do it? What's the investment? How do I protect it? We're getting there. So you're going to start your digital nonprofit marketing without skipping a beat. We'll create programs, quickly validate your grant funding system. Now, if you have grant writers on staff, that's fine. We can be a supplement for what they're doing, especially when you see what the investment is. It's a fraction of what you would normally pay, right? It would take you 5 to 10 different consultants to do what we do, and we do it all in one package. So you get all the trainings, you get all the templates up front. You'll have a strategy session to map out everything for you for a fraction of what it just costs for one grant writer. You get all of this, an online community. Our DAP system is databases, analytics, alignment, personnel, and a system, license as a service. And then you'll get these weekly calls. We have webinars. We call them Webinar Wednesday. So every single week, we do a specialty use case on one of our top consultants in the country that's really making it happen. Today was Alyssa Kaiser in arts and museums, right? Last week, it was marketing grants. The week before, it was housing. So you'll get this archive for all of our clients. And what we do is we manage not only your grants, but we also do your marketing. And because that's the confusion sometimes. Well, what do we have to do after this? Everything is done for you. All we need from you is your project description, and Alyssa will help you write your grants for each project, whether you're doing a historic, let's talk about that, just historic artifacts. There's and Alyssa, I know we had a conversation like the Martin Luther King house, right?
Right.
That's a house. If you're doing a historic well, I've seen that in Alabama, that's just sitting there. All those things can generate grant money and also give your city, your county, your district a better notoriety and get yourself some traffic, right? So that's incredible.
So I just give you an example. The Chicago Water Tower.
Yep.
Remember we won't remember this, but
1871.
In 1871, there was a Great Fire in Chicago, right?
Okay.
And so the water tower was the landmark that's still standing from it. So
Okay.
it was used in a time of need as a water pump and everything like that. But now it's used in movie backdrops. It's a historical landmark. So the historical landmark part of it is that it was used in a state of emergency, and it was able to not only water the people, but water the fire. And, fast forward hundreds of years, it's still standing. So it's got this nice lighting system, and people go there to see it all the time. You could create memberships out of it. You can walk through. They've got this little museum next to it. They've got a little, you create a story out of it. And that's really what it narrows down to, is whatever the story is being told in our historic landmarks, and how we can preserve that history is very important. Much like the MLK house down here, you can walk through his home, but there's a cost to walk through his home. A lot of people want to see where he was born. And it's right down the street from the museum, but it's a separate cost. And I'm sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm sure that they go into two different cohorts of money, but they're all owned by the same people. So it 100% is just the story that it has, and how important it is to the history of the city and the tourism, and how much it drives the economic of that city.
And we can manage all that for you. So here's what we got. Here's what we have, more eloquent English. Anywhere from 500 a month to 5,000 a month. Again, a fraction of what you would even pay one person. You can have us do everything for you. And it's just based on how much you want to raise, right? And then how much you want to do. So if you want us to do everything, you're closer to the right. If you don't want us to manage the Google grant or anything like that, you just want us to do some grants for you, to implement some of the programs, we can do that for you. And like I said, Alyssa is one of the top in the game when it comes to historic artifacts. And as you go, people ask, well, can we do more than this? Absolutely, we can do more. If you have multiple locations, we can have one of these for each one of your locations. We're doing that and working on deals with a few states to do that in a couple of cities for their events, for their artifacts. So we'll manage everything and at a fraction of the cost. There's no payroll taxes. There's no anything extra. What you see is what you get. And of course, we can break it down. That's our subscription pricing. The annual pricing, you get a little bit of a discount, and the advantage is that we get to do all your projects as fast as we can up front. Whereas the other, if you just do the subscription amount, we will do your work as we go, right? And as you pay over the 12 months. So it's a 12-month subscription. Good thing is every single one of these packages have investment protection included in it. Meaning, if we don't at least get your investment back within 12 months, we will continue to write at no cost or give you a credit for the difference. So just to recap, on this webinar, you have seen a few case studies. You know not only what we do, but why Alyssa and I care, a little bit about our stories. 3 steps, right? Isolate your niche, create those cutting edge programs, make sure that those programs are supported by a strong foundation with your mission, with your board, with your volunteers, your fundraising, and the grants being the icing on the top, and then have a way to sustainable create a system. So many times there's organizations that they have a good person, and then that person leaves and everything's in shambles because the documents are all over the place. Nothing's digital. They don't have a system in place. This is a system, right? A fundraising and a grant funding overall system. You have all the templates and everything you need to be successful. We manage the major things for you and leverage the personnel to really scale things out. If you have existing marketing and grant writing staff, this is just a supplement to what they already do. And lastly, the biggest thing is take action. If not now, when, right? We only have a few slots. So what we do, if you know that you want to work with us, but you don't know what actual package you want, that's fine. You can, in this link, you can put down a refundable $500 deposit. If you know that you want to work with us and you know what package it is, that's fine too. You just put down your first month. The link, you can go down and click the link below and it'll take you directly to that. You can put that deposit down. Once we do that, we'll show you a list of grants in your area. If you don't like what you see at that point in time, we will refund your money. We have not had to do that yet because people are blown away by our system and what we're able to do and all the grants and the list that we're able to produce. Nobody is going to be able to produce everything like that with grants, with incentives, with marketing grants, with block grants, federal, city, county, state incentives, tax rebates, all in one system. We've put our blood, sweat, and tears into this, guys. So put down that $500 deposit. We'll see you on a strategy session. We only take 20 new clients every single month. And then after that, we can put down your deposit. We can put you on the waiting list. We just like to keep our success ratios high with the clients that we have, especially a lot of our clients are opting to do you know, a lot of different projects, right? 20 to 40 to 100 different projects. So they have priority, the people that put down their deposit first. So with that said, I appreciate everybody's time. Alyssa, thank you for being on with us today.
Thank you for having me, Alan. It's been a pleasure. It was great to really showcase everything that I can do to help our community. You know, the nonprofit community is very big. You guys just, you know, Alan's concept is awesome. I have for years looked for something like this. So it's really great, and I really look forward to working with you in the future, Alan. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate it. They also have a private Facebook group that you have to knock on the door to get in. We'll put the link. You have to be screened. So more information on that to come. Thank you, everybody. Remember, it's not about the money. It's all about the impact. Everybody have a blessed day.